The station's chronometer blinked 3:17 in pale blue, which meant either it was very early morning or the system had given up on the concept of time again. Elias Rowan tapped the side of the display with a wrench. "You and I have discussed this," he informed it. "Linear progression, very fashionable. All the best civilizations are doing it." The chronometer blinked 88 in response. "Bold choice," Elias muttered. KX-119 drifted in its usual orbit around the dim blue dwarf star, humming like an old refrigerator that had seen too much of the universe. Elias floated through Corridor C with a mug of something that claimed to be coffee. The mug read, "World's Best DOCKMASDER." He had ordered it himself. There had been a sale. The dock was quiet in the way only deep space could be quiet, a silence layered over the faint tremor of engines, the whisper of coolant cycling through pipes, the distant thud of automated cargo clamps testing themselves for fun. Elias had once tried to count the sounds to feel less alone. He had reached 12 and decided that was enough companionship for one evening. He was halfway through recalibrating docking ring 2 when the incoming transmission alert flared crimson across his retinal display. "Of course," he sighed, "I insult one chronometer and the galaxy notices." The transmission carried the sigil of the Terlian Consortium, an elegant spiral etched in silver light. Elias straightened automatically. Terlians did not frequent forgotten human outposts unless paperwork had gone very wrong. The face that resolved on his console was elongated, serene, framed by luminous glyphs. "Dockmaster of KX-119, the voice intoned, smooth as polished alloy. "We request temporary docking clearance to disembark surplus organic cargo." Elias blinked. "I'm sorry, surplus what now?" "Organic cargo." He glanced around the empty docking bay, as if extra life forms might already be stacked behind the fuel canisters. "You make it sound like you overordered tomatoes." A fractional pause. "The cargo in question is a sentient adult female of Terlian origin." Elias leaned back against the console. "You're dropping off a person." "Yes, and you're calling her surplus." "Yes." He rubbed his eyes. "You people really need a public relations department." Protocol nudged him like an annoying conscience. He granted docking clearance. The Terlian vessel slid into view, a crescent of silver light cutting across the viewport. It attached to the ring with a precise metallic sigh. Elias felt the faint tremor through his boots as atmosphere equalized. The ramp extended. She descended alone. For a moment, Elias forgot the next line in whatever sarcastic remark he had prepared. She looked human almost. Dark hair fell in a long braid over one shoulder. Her posture was straight, unyielding. Her features were fine, controlled. But from either side of her head rose long, graceful ears that tapered to delicate points, curving slightly backward. They shifted subtly as if tasting the air. Her eyes met his. Amber luminous. Behind her, a Terlian officer stepped forward. "This individual, Valera of the 7th Harmonic, is chronologically unsuitable for bonding under consortium standards. She is to be released from registry and reassigned at your discretion." Elias stared at the officer. "Chronologically unsuitable. She has exceeded optimal reproductive parameters." Elias looked back at the woman. She appeared perhaps in her early 30s by any human measure. Composed, alert, very much not obsolete. "How old is she?" he asked. 82 cycles. "And that translates to?" "Comparable to your species, 3rd decade." Elias let out a short laugh that echoed against the metal walls. "You're abandoning her for being 30. The officer's expression did not change. "Her viability curve has declined." "Buddy," Elias said, "my entire life is a declined viability curve." Valera's ears twitched, a minute movement. He could not tell if it was irritation or suppressed amusement. "She is educated in xenobiology and subspace cartography," the officer continued. "Her skills are now statistically inefficient." "Right," Elias replied. "Wouldn't want any inefficient scientists cluttering up the galaxy." Silence pooled in the docking bay. The blue dwarf's light filtered through the viewport, casting a cold sheen over silver hull and steel floor. Valera spoke for the first time. Her voice was low, steady. "Dockmaster, I am aware that my presence is inconvenient. I will not impose beyond necessity." The phrasing was precise, almost formal, yet something beneath it trembled, not weakness but restraint. Elias folded his arms. "You're not cargo, and you're not an inconvenience. You're unexpected, that's different." The Terlian officer inclined his head slightly. "Our transaction is complete." "Transaction," Elias repeated. The officer stepped back up the ramp without further ceremony. The hatch sealed. Moments later, the crescent vessel disengaged, engines flaring in silent brilliance before vanishing into slipstream. No farewell, no backward glance. The docking bay felt larger after it left. Elias became acutely aware that he and the alien woman were standing alone in a structure designed for freighters and noise. He cleared his throat. Well, welcome to KX-119. We have breathable air, intermittent gravity, and a vending machine that believes in chaos. Her gaze shifted around the bay, her ears angled outward, then forward again. Your station resonates at multiple frequencies, she observed. The primary reactor is slightly misaligned. He stared at her. You've been here 30 seconds. The fluctuation is pronounced. He huffed a laugh. I've been trying to fix that for 6 months. She looked at him again, and for the first time he saw something like curiosity sharpen her expression. You are the sole operator. Congratulations. You've identified the tragic hero of this facility. Her head tilted. Tragic. I talked to appliances. I detected that. He blinked. You heard me arguing with the chronometer. I heard the chronometer arguing with you. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then he barked out a laugh, loud and surprised. The sound bounced off steel and composite, less lonely than usual. Okay, he said, gesturing toward the inner corridor. Before we tackle my reactor's personality flaws, I can offer you a tour. It's short, very exclusive. Limited tickets. She hesitated only a fraction before stepping forward. As she moved past him, he noticed the controlled grace in her stride, the way her long ears adjusted with each shift in sound. Valera, was it? He asked. Yes. I'm Elias. I run this place, poorly but consistently. Her lips curved almost imperceptibly. Consistency is statistically admirable. They walked into the corridor together, the door sliding shut behind them with a muted hiss. For the first time in years, the echo of Elias' footsteps was joined by another rhythm. The station did not feel quite as silent. By the third day, Elias had stopped pretending that Valera was a temporary inconvenience and started pretending the station had always required 2 minds to function properly. This, he announced, sliding open a narrow door with theatrical pride, is the East Wing. She stepped inside and examined the single storage rack, the coiled cables, the emergency rations stacked like guilty secrets. Her long ears angled forward, then slightly to the side. Your station possesses a flexible definition of geography. It's a growth mindset, he replied. Very modern. She moved toward the wall panel where the reactor's auxiliary readings flickered. The energy output fluctuates at irregular intervals. Your containment lattice is compensating inefficiently. I prefer the term improvising heroically. She extended her fingers toward the console. The interface blinked, recalibrating to her unfamiliar bioelectric signature. May I? Elias gestured grandly. By all means, if it explodes, I'll note that you looked confident. Her hands moved with quiet precision. Lines of data shifted across the display, equations unfolding in layered projections. Elias watched as she rerouted 3 subroutines he had never dared to touch. There, she said after a moment. The reactor will no longer stutter during peak cycles. He waited for the tremor that usually rippled through the deck plating every few hours. Nothing happened. He looked at her. You fixed my Thursday problem. It is Tuesday. Exactly. It's thinking about Thursday. It likes to prepare. Her lips curved faintly. He had begun to recognize that expression as amusement. Her ears lifted slightly when she felt it. They fell into a rhythm that surprised him. She analyzed. He translated the station's stubborn habits. She spoke in terms of harmonic resonance and subspace drift. He countered with analogies involving duct tape and optimism. During a meal break, if powdered protein rehydrated with recycled water qualified, she examined the utensil with scholarly interest. This nourishment is artificially structured, she observed. Welcome to human cuisine on a budget. She tasted it with visible restraint. It is assertive. That's the flavor of survival. Her gaze lingered on him a fraction longer than usual. You joke frequently when confronted with inadequacy. He leaned back in his chair. It's either that or scream into the air vents. The vents scream back. I have heard them. See hostile architecture. Later, as they stood near the observation viewport, the blue dwarf star pulsed faintly beyond the reinforced glass. Valera's ears shifted minutely. It will flare within 2 standard hours, she said. Elias folded his arms. We have monitoring satellites for that. They are imprecise. And you're not. I can perceive the magnetic tension building. He studied her profile, the controlled stillness in her posture. On your world, is that normal, hearing stars complain? Yes, must make small talk difficult. She turned to him. On my world, small talk is statistically minimized. I can tell. He expected the conversation to stall there, to drift into that careful politeness she carried like armor. Instead, she spoke again. My designation as unsuitable was determined by algorithm, she said evenly. Compatibility metrics, fertility projections, social yield. I fell below acceptable thresholds. Ilias felt irritation spark under his ribs. You mapped subspace anomalies for a living. Yes, you can hear a star about to sneeze. Yes, and they decided you were past your prime. Her ears lowered a fraction. Reproductive efficiency is prioritized. Contribution outside that parameter is secondary. He snorted. If humans did that, half our politicians would be recycled for parts. She considered this. Your species appears inconsistent. We specialize in it. Silence settled, not uncomfortable. The star beyond the viewport shimmered faintly. I once proposed, she continued, that emotional compatibility be included in bonding calculations. I suggested that affection might enhance cooperative output. And it was deemed immeasurable. Ilias grinned crookedly. That's because affection refuses to fill out forms. Her eyes held his. You believe it is significant. I believe, he said slowly, that if you reduce everything to numbers, you end up very efficient and very alone. The words surprised him as they left his mouth. He scratched the back of his neck. Not that I'm an expert. My romantic history could be archived under cautionary tales. Her ears lifted slightly. You have not bonded. Nope. Turns out talking to appliances isn't considered alluring. I find your conversations with the chronometer structurally sound. He stared at her. Is that a compliment? Yes. He laughed, the sound echoing lightly through the corridor. Careful. I might frame that. A sudden tremor passed through the station. Not the usual misfire of aging systems, but a controlled vibration. Ilias glanced at the panel. That's not Thursday. Valera closed her eyes briefly. Her ears angled sharply toward the outer hull. External vessel, Terlian configuration. His stomach tightened. They move fast for people who just threw someone away. The comm panel flared to life before he could reach it. A crisp symbol resolved on screen. A patrol craft. Official. Dockmaster of KX-119, a voice transmitted. Our records indicate you are harboring a decommissioned citizen of the consortium. Ilias crossed his arms. She has a name. Valera of the 7th Harmonic is classified as excess population. Congratulations on the worst phrase I've heard all week. Beside him, Valera stood straight, composed. Only the subtle tension in her ears betrayed anything beneath the surface. She remains consortium property until reassignment, the voice continued. Ilias glanced at her. Property. She's not cargo, he said evenly. She's a guest. A temporary status. Funny thing about temporary, Ilias replied. It tends to stretch. There was a pause, charged and thin. We will evaluate the situation, the patrol officer said at last. Do not obstruct consortium directives. The transmission cut. The hum of the station returned, steady but altered. Ilias exhaled slowly. Well, that's new. Valera did not move. You risk diplomatic complication. I run a rusted dock around a grumpy star. I think we've already offended the galaxy. Her gaze shifted to him. You do not perceive me as inefficient. He met her eyes without flinching. I perceive you as the only reason this place hasn't fallen apart in the last 72 hours. A faint warmth entered her expression. Her ears lifted, not fully but enough. Outside, the blue dwarf shimmered brighter for a brief moment, exactly 2 hours after her prediction. Ilias glanced at the viewport, then back at her. You were right about the flare. Yes, he gave her a sideways smile. You're going to ruin my reputation as the most competent being on this station. She regarded him calmly. Your reputation is statistically resilient. He laughed again, softer this time. And though a patrol vessel lingered beyond the hull and bureaucracy coiled like distant thunder, the corridor felt less like a waiting room for exile, and more like the beginning of something neither algorithm nor chronometer could measure. The patrol vessel did not leave. It remained beyond the docking perimeter like an unblinking eye, its signal pulsing at precise intervals. Ilias tried to ignore it. He failed. I preferred it when my problems were limited to moody reactors, he muttered, staring at the tactical overlay. Valera stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back. Her long ears were upright, angled toward the faint electromagnetic tremor of the ship outside. They are scanning the station's structural integrity. Good, Elias replied. Maybe they'll file a maintenance request. She did not smile this time. Hours passed under that silent pressure. The station felt smaller, its corridors tighter. Even the chronometer behaved as if unwilling to attract attention. Elias found himself pacing, a habit he had never developed in solitude. When alone, there had been no one to pace for. "They will not withdraw voluntarily," Valera said at last. "You sound very certain." "I am familiar with their persistence." He stopped walking. What exactly does reassignment mean? Her pause was fractional, but he saw it. Continued research under directive supervision, restricted autonomy. Reproductive consultation, if deemed biologically viable. He stared at her. "They throw you away for being too old and then reserve the right to change their minds. Efficiency models update. Convenient." A new transmission cut through the air. The patrol officer's image reappeared, expression carved from restraint. "Dockmaster, prepare Valera of the 7th harmonic for transfer. A retrieval shuttle is en route." Elias felt something shift inside him, a click like a docking clamp locking into place. For years he had drifted through assignments, through days, through conversations with machines. He had let things happen. This time he did not feel like drifting. "She's not going," he said. "You are not authorized to refuse." He glanced at Valera. She stood straight, but her ears had lowered slightly, angled back in controlled tension. "Actually," Elias said slowly, "interstellar law is a beautiful, messy thing." The officer's gaze sharpened. "Clarify." Elias swiped through legal archives on his console, fingers moving faster than they ever had during maintenance checks. Section 14 of the Cooperative Sentience Accord. Spousal bonds between consenting citizens of signatory species grant immediate shared residency and protective status. The patrol officer was silent. Valera turned her head toward him. "Elias." He met her eyes. "It's real. We studied it during trade negotiations. It was meant to encourage cross-species diplomacy. Romantic bureaucracy, very noble." "Your implication," the officer said coldly, "is irrational. I've been accused of worse." He faced Valera fully now. The hum of the station filled the space between them. "They can't reassign you if you're legally my spouse." Her ears lifted slightly in surprise. "You are proposing a strategic union." "I am proposing," he said, heart pounding hard enough to rattle his ribs, "that you stay. Not as cargo, not as a guest waiting for the next order. Stay because you choose to. This decision would permanently alter your status," she said quietly. "Your solitude would end." He let out a short breath that almost became a laugh. "I think my solitude has already ended. You fixed my reactor. You predicted my star's tantrums. You even complimented my arguments with appliances." A flicker of warmth crossed her face. "They are structurally sound." "Exactly. How can I go back to arguing alone?" The patrol officer's voice cut in. "This farce will not be recognized without proper registry." Elias moved to the central console. "Then let's register." He looked at Valera once more. "I won't pretend this is statistically optimized. I can't promise grand ceremonies. The catering will be terrible, but I can promise you won't be measured by a curve ever again." Silence stretched, dense and electric. Her ears rose fully now, tall and resolute. "On my world, bonding is preceded by compatibility analysis, social forecasting, and genetic projection." "Romantic," he said faintly. "I find," she continued, eyes steady on his, "that I prefer uncertainty." His breath caught. "I accept," she said. For a moment he simply stared at her, as if the universe had spoken in a language he barely understood. Then he slammed his palm onto the registry pad. "Computer, initiate cross-species marital contract under Cooperative Sentience Accord, Section 14. The station AI hesitated. "Warning. Ceremony attendance below recommended threshold." "Napoleon counts," Elias snapped. A small repair drone buzzed uncertainly from the corridor. "Witness confirmed," the AI replied. Valera stepped beside him and placed her hand on the biometric panel. Their readings intertwined across the display, human neural patterns threading with Terlian harmonic signatures. "Consent verified," the AI announced. "Bond recognized, shared residency activated." Elias exhaled shakily. "That's it, no dramatic music." "Budget constraints," the AI said. He let out a laugh that bordered on hysteria. The patrol officer's image flickered back into focus. Data scrolled rapidly across his interface. "Registry update confirmed," he said at last, voice tight. "Valera of the 7th Harmonic is now recognized under human marital protection." "Correct," Elias replied, trying to sound calmer than he felt. A long pause. "Your actions are unconventional," the officer said. "We prefer creative." The transmission ended. Moments later, the patrol vessel's signal shifted. Engines flared. The ship withdrew, slipping into the dark between stars without further protest. The station felt different the instant it vanished. Not larger, not safer, but anchored. Elias leaned back against the console, suddenly aware of how fast his heart was racing. "Well," he said, "that escalated quickly." Valera looked at him, something luminous in her expression. "You altered the trajectory of my existence." "Yeah," he replied softly. "You did the same for mine." She stepped closer. "You are no longer a solitary operator." "I suppose not. You are my husband." He blinked. "That's going to take some getting used to." Her ears angled forward in what he now recognized as quiet delight. "We will adapt." Outside, the blue dwarf pulsed, but its flare did not feel threatening. Elias glanced at the reactor readings, stable, harmonized. "You know," he said, "a month ago I was arguing with a chronometer and calling that a social life." "And now?" she asked. He looked at her, at the steady intelligence in her eyes, at the long ears that no longer drooped with dismissal but stood tall with choice. "Now I argue with someone who argues back," he said. "It's an upgrade." A faint laugh escaped her, melodic and real. They stood together before the viewport, not as dockmaster and discarded scientist, not as cargo and custodian, but as partners who had chosen each other against the neat calculations of two civilizations. The station hummed around them, no longer a monument to isolation but a shared frontier. And for the first time since he had arrived at the edge of charted space, Elias did not feel like a man orbiting emptiness. He felt like he had finally docked.